by reading the English translation of a hymn composed by Surdas, a blind saint of India of the 15th century. None like God for us. Master, for us there is no one like thee. For thy devotees thou dost choose the best, and though we ask for brass, thou givest us gold. The hungry thou dost feed with good things, the thirsty go to thee for nectar, and to the naked thou dost give shining robes of love. There is no one master like thee for us. As the cow keeps by her calf, so art thou ever with thine own. Thou, O gracious Lord, dost honor even humble offerings. Thy loving hand is outstretched to receive a straw, if only true love doth offer it. All generous, all wise, according to thy riches, thou dost satisfy our needs. In the day of affliction, thou dost hasten to help us, to make sufficient, to make suffering pleasant. Thou art ever faithful to thy promises. There is no one like thee for us, my Master. The subject of our talk this morning is Varieties of Spiritual Experience. Religion is direct experience. Religion is not a matter of discussion or reading or lecturing. Real religion is experience direct and personal. However much you hear from a person, even from a person who has direct experience, that won't help you. As one cannot get cured of a disease if oneself does not take the medicine, in the same way, each one of us must have direct experience. A little emotional titillation is not enough. A little intellectual joy is not enough. I say these things. There is a feeling if you read religious books, hymns, and scriptures, you get a certain amount of joy. But that is not enough. It is more or less intellectual, though this joy is of higher order. Or you might have get emotional excitement. That is also enough and not enough. That does not stand. Unless one has some experience, one is not quite so different from a person who does not believe in God, who does not believe in religion. Almost on the same level. In orthodox commentaries on Vedanta philosophy, it is, if you master the whole of Vedas, that is also not enough. Direct experience is needed. Direct experience is needed because everyone has to pass through doubts and disbeliefs. Even a religious person, earnestly striving for a religious person, might be swept off one's feet when doubts and disbeliefs come in a tremendous degree. Sometimes they come in a tremendous degree even to a person who is deadly earnest. It might be for his growth, or it might be to test him. And we find even the spiritual stalwarts have to pass through great trials and tribulations of spiritual nature. This I say not to discourage, and this we study also, we notice, not only to be in despair, not to be in despair, but to know this is the situation. These are the laws of spiritual life. We must be ready for all these trials. And the trials end, or the trials become less, when we have direct experience. I say the trials become less. Real trial is over when you have known yourself, when you have the highest realization. Not that it is fighting against a lost game, but there is joy in it, even in struggle. When you strive for a good thing, when you strive for an ideal, there is joy in it. Many persons, for even political ideal or scientific ideal or anything, some ideal, will sacrifice everything like a piece of straw. Don't think that he is a fool. Don't think he does not know how to take care of his own interest. He knows very well. He has got something because of which all earthly inducements seem to be nothing to him. It is said that a great saint came to the court of a Mughal Muhammadan emperor, and that emperor was praying for more money and so on. And then the saint went away, and the emperor asked him, "Why do you go away?" He said, "I have nothing to do with a person who looks to God for more and more personal enjoyment." And the saint was asked, "Your sacrifice is so great, you would not care for all these things." The saint said, "No, my sacrifice is not great. Your sacrifice is great. I have got something much greater than earthly enjoyment. Therefore it was not a case of sacrifice with me. For you it is a matter of sacrifice, because you are satisfied with the brass beads, where the great source of joy is left behind. You do not care for that. And as such real sacrifice is yours, it is not mine." So if one knows for which one is trying in spiritual life, one does not think any sacrifice too much. One does not think any struggle is too much. And it is good that we have to pass through these stages. Anything worth having requires sacrifice, requires effort. If we remember these things, we shall not magnify the difficulties that come in our spiritual life. But it is good to know that what are the things we shall have to pass through. Not that one will have to necessarily pass through all these sufferings. For some it might be easier, for some it might be more difficult. As weather conditions are different, degrees of difficulties also are different. But that is not the question. The question is, when we have love for the ideal, these sufferings, these struggles, these are not sufferings, these are struggles, let us say. Sometimes it is good to acquire a thing by effort than as a gift. Achievements are much better than gifts. If you get gifts, you would not enjoy the value of those things. So, it is good that we have to struggle to realize the goal of spiritual life. But spiritual experience is necessary to get a secure footing. But spiritual experiences might be real, might be unreal, might be true, might be false, might be real, might be illusory, might be simply imagination, the outcome of a heated brain. Some persons are so very eager to get the thing at a cheap price, they become victims of self-delusion or self-exaltation in spiritual life. victims of self-delusion, without giving the price, thinking what happens in spiritual life. Imagination becomes fire, imagination becomes intensified. Either they become victims of self-delusion, they begin to see visions or hear voices, or victims of self-exaltation, they feel a pride. Oh, they are thinking of spiritual life, they feel a sense of pride. And that pride becomes intensified, and they begin to see visions or voices. It is simply the pride or egotism. It's the form of spiritual experience. It is said, St. John of Cross said, I become terrified when I find many persons barely attempting to meditate begin to say they have heard the voice of God, they have got directions from God, and so on. There's something wrong in their mind, something wrong in their outlook, in their beginning. Here also we find many persons coming. I find several persons coming and talking of spiritual experiences. In the beginning, when I was new to this country, I did not know. I was thinking, what was the matter? I would be silent. Now, I have understood a little better, and I see how they become the victims of delusion or self-exaltation. Saint Teresa had many spiritual experiences. Would say, even she would say, you cannot be too cautious about spiritual experiences. Sometimes there might be the allurements of devil in terms of Christian theology. She would say it is better to resist these spiritual experiences, because if they are true, they will leave a mark on your life. So you will not be a loser if you resist. Rather, that is the advantage. You will be able to distinguish between the real spiritual experience and the false one. You are gainer. Yes, it is always good, always safer to resist these spiritual experiences. But people become so much victims of pride. They may or may not have any spiritual experience. They'll begin to talk about it. I had a spiritual experience. As if spiritual experience is so easy. Yes, it is easy. Sometimes one stumbles upon truth. But even to be established in truth, it requires hard labor, hard discipline. You cannot get it easily. Some persons stumble upon truth. By chance they get it. Even when you get it, as a gift of God, to keep it, you will have to work hard. Several persons, all of a sudden, they got spiritual experiences. But that was not enough. They had to struggle hard. Even Saint Teresa said, God came to me unsolicited. I did not seek God. God sought me. She had some spiritual experience that stimulated her spiritual aspirations. But after that, she had to pass through tremendous spiritual struggle, through the dark night of the soul for many, many years. She said, at first my spiritual yearning became lukewarm. Then it began to wane. It came to pass that I lost interest in spiritual life. I made little of my imperfections. That way I went on for 20 or 21 years. Her struggle was such. Then all of a sudden, she saw once a vision of Christ, and she got back her spiritual yearning. And after that, it was a continual joy. And it gave her energy. And those 20 years were the fruitful period of her life. So she had to pass through such a great struggle. Several saints have felt that. It is something like tempting as it were, luring as it were. You get something and afterwards it is gone. In poetic language, you hear a music in dream or in the middle of the night. The music fades away, but the sound is there in your ears. It allures you, but you do not get it. But those who are after that continue to struggle, then afterwards they get that back. But there is a tendency to mistake false experiences to be real experiences. When you read of the experiences of others, of the saints, we think you can get it without giving the real price for it. It happened during the lifetime of Ramakrishna, because Ramakrishna had many experiences. Constantly he had spiritual experiences. Some of the late disciples especially, they would come and afterwards they would say they are also having similar experiences. But there was Swami Vivekananda, ultra-rationalist, though greatly spiritual personality. He would not believe all these things, and he began to inquire, began to investigate, and he found several of them were false, were not the right thing, or he would say it was the disease of weak nerves. Not that there are not spiritual experiences. By indirections, find directions out. By false things, you find that there is something wrong or there is something right. There is the spiritual experience. Many saints have spiritual experiences all over the world. So you cannot deny that there are not spiritual experiences. Psychologists or rationalists will say, well, even the saints have said that visions and voices are wrong. Yes, and therefore they find some arguments in their favor. These are the outcome of deranged mind or persons who are almost out of mind. They want to put forward this as an argument, but they forget these saints had spiritual experiences. Therefore, they ask others to be cautious, not to easily take these things to be real experiences. They caution people so that they may not be losers. They may not fall on the roadside by false glamour. We find sometimes the experiences are similar in different countries. It is strange. People living in different, practicing different religions, living under different conditions, fundamentally get similar experiences. And there is no doubt that that many saints had spiritual experiences, and they were saints because they had experiences. It is not they were canonized by Pope. Many say Sudas, he was a blind poet, blind person, he had no book learning. But because of his spiritual experiences, he became so famous. It is said that Saint Teresa's life was regulated by visions and voices. Yes, one could easily think it to be a pathological case. But look at her achievements. She worked for 20 years. She started 17 convents, 15 monasteries. She reformed the Catholic Church at that time. She started to reform. She felt that it was her mission to reform. And she had to undergo many troubles, many trials. She was tried as being under the delusion of devil. In that time, there was the Inquisition, She almost escaped Inquisition, but she stood all these things. She could not do that had she not had genuine experience. Saint Francis of Assisi's life was also regulated or determined by seeing visions or hearing voices. In his early days, he heard a voice, "Go home." And he was directed to repair a ruined church. And he began that as his first work. Once he saw a leper, and that evoked his spiritual feelings to serve him. And afterwards he found the leper has disappeared. Mysterious things happened. But these mysterious things were the cause of strength to his life. And he did so many works, and yet the full share of troubles in working. Even saints, when they come to the fields of work, the laws of work are such there will be many problems. They have to pass through those grinding trials. And the saints pass through those trials because they have spiritual experience. Sometimes experience comes unsought for. Ramakrishna would say there are different kinds of experiences. Some get the experience all on a sudden. Some get the experiences in dreams. Some had to undergo full quota of spiritual practices. Some are born free. Some are born with great spiritual potentialities. They have not to work very hard. In Ramakrishna's life, we find he had some experience while in his childhood, but he had to undergo great and hard spiritual practices. And when the first real experience came, it came in the form of great light. He said, outwardly he felt unconscious, oblivious of the surroundings, but inwardly he felt a great peace and joy. And he felt that the whole surrounding has been flooded by celestial light. Waves of light, as it were roaring. He felt everything is covered with celestial light. And that light gave him joy. And afterwards, he began to see the face of the Divine Mother, as he would say. In the beginning, he would say now and then, and afterwards, he could see constantly, as it were. And his life was regulated by consulting the Divine Mother, as it were, or the direct directions of the Divine Mother. Ramakrishna passed through several experiences, the whole gamut of spiritual experiences. I say the whole gamut. The last and the ultimate experience is when you become one with the ultimate reality. When Ramakrishna was practicing the last and the highest spiritual practice, he wanted to be one with the infinite, to be one with the ultimate reality. But he was a devotee of the Divine Mother. His love for Divine Mother was so great that it came as a handicap. It is interesting. Whenever you try to meditate to be one with the ultimate reality, the face of the Divine Mother would appear before him. And afterwards he succeeded when he became one with the ultimate reality and forgot everything else for the time being. Similar experience we find at least the mention of it in Eckhart's writings. Eckhart says, for the ultimate realization, even the symbols and visions and all these things are handicapped, because as an ultimate realization, you have to become one with the infinite. You have to be independent of anything else. You have to become one with the oneness. Anything that is separate from oneness is a handicap. You say even Christ, the humanity of Christ is a handicap. When you think Christ in terms of one who took human form and loving and so on, there is always a separation. There is always the existence of two, and that does not give you the knowledge of the ultimate realization. Ultimate realization is to be one with the one. Ramakrishna had that. When even he would forget the existence of the Divine Mother. But Ramakrishna has this advantage. Afterwards, he could come back to any level of spiritual experience. He could soar to the highest and he could come down to the lowest spiritual experience. All paths were open to him. In Swami Vivekananda we find he had spiritual experiences. A person like Swami Vivekananda was so rationally, would challenge everything, would challenge even the very realizations of Ramakrishna. While very young, once he was meditating and he felt his room was flooded by light and he saw a figure. He was frightened. It came out and afterwards he felt sorry. He felt it was the vision of Buddha he had. And afterwards, while studying in the college, while getting education, he became extremely critical and skeptical. But when he came into contact with Ramakrishna and he was doing spiritual practices, when Ramakrishna gave him the first real direction about spiritual practice, and that very day, for hours he was in an ecstatic condition. He was repeating the holy name and was going round and round the house. He was in an ecstatic condition, almost abnormal as it was. His brother disciples were afraid and came to Ramakrishna. And Ramakrishna said, let him be in that state for some time, it will be all right. And afterwards he came to the normal human plane. His field was so ready, he at once could get that very high degree of spiritual experience. Afterwards, he got the highest spiritual experience, which is said to become one with the infinite. When one becomes one with the infinite, one forgets one's body, one forgets one's mind even. Once Vivekananda was meditating, and he had the highest spiritual experience. And afterwards he began to cry, where is my body? Where are my hands? And those who are nearby were frightened. They came to Ramakrishna. And Ramakrishna said, he has pestered me long for this experience. Let him have it. And afterwards he came down to the normal plane. And he had the highest spiritual experience. Saints always do not say, rarely would they like to say they had any experience, what kind of experience that was. But casually, the bystanders or persons who are close with them know. In Vivekananda's case, we know 2 or 3 times when he had that kind of highest experience. But sometimes he would say about his ordinary experience, I am not alone. God is there by my side. He had its full share of struggle, but he was undaunted. He was courageous because of these experiences. So we see that there are real experiences. Because there are real experiences, people feign that they have other experiences which are false. Naturally, our experiences will be determined by our outlook on spiritual life. As for instance, those who want to develop their spiritual life by karma yoga or doing dedicated works or unselfish works, naturally their experiences will be of different type. They may not see any vision. They may not hear any voice, superhuman voice. But their spiritual experiences will be of different kind. They, as they began to do dedicated works, as they began to serve people with perfectly unselfish motive, they will feel there's oneness of life. They will feel that ego is becoming less and less. They will feel that they are becoming identified with life in general. It will be difficult for them to distinguish, differentiate between the good and the wicked, between the high and the low. They will have a different outlook. They will have the outlook of one all-pervading life, existence of life. You see, that is much better than seeing visions or hearing voices. They feel the existence of one indivisible, united life. They begin to see that, feel that. And ultimately, they will have no fear, they will have no trace of selfishness. They will have no fear of death or fear of life, because they are feeling the existence of one life. And they will develop unselfishness, unselfish love, compassion for one and all. And that will give them strength, that will give them fearlessness. Ultimate criterion of growth of spiritual life is fearlessness. Not to have the fear even of death. When one has become identified with the eternal life, how can one have fear? So a person who is doing dedicated work for one's spiritual growth will have this kind of experiences. He may not have any vision, he may not have deep meditation, he may not do any meditation even, but simply through unselfish works one will have this kind of experiences. It is said in Christian theology, and it is true for all, there are three kinds of spiritual experiences: intellectual, imaginary, and corporeal. Intellectual, you feel in your mind. You do not see any vision on fire. You feel within your mind. As for instance, if you feel the presence of God, it is not seeing with the eyes of the body. It is not seeing even with the eyes of the soul either. It is just feeling. It is not seeing. It is feeling. You feel the existence of God, all-pervading God. You feel with your mind, if you can say that. But it is not the question of hearing. It is the question of seeing with your eyes. Though some persons see actually the visions, Ramakrishna sometimes would have visions with open eyes. Many times you would have visions when in an ecstatic condition. In certain cases, he had visions with open eyes. He would be seeing other things, and at the same time he would have. Intellectual experience, though the expression is not accurate. Intellectual means you feel it. In your mind you feel it. The all-pervading presence of God. And it is sure there is no chance of having any illusions about it. You feel it so much. And imaginary, sometimes when you meditate, when you pray, various thoughts come. Those thoughts become mingled with imagination. So sometimes it is found your experience is simply the externalization of your inner thoughts or of your inner memories. And corporeal, you see visions of Christ or visions of Shiva and so on. But the greatest and the surest experience is when you feel it, and you feel it so tangibly that it is much more realistic than seeing a thing with your eyes. Some of the saints have said, yes, we felt the presence so tangibly that experience is much more real with us than seeing a thing with our bodily eyes. So a person who by doing dedicated work, working for the love of God, when you will get experience, his experience will be of this type. And those who are devotional, their experiences will be different. Those who worship Shiva, those who worship the Divine Mother, those who worship Christ, their experiences will be different. They will have visions, they will hear voices and so on, because they've started that way. And visions and voices also are experienced by different persons. It is said, those who want to see visions will see visions. Others will not want to see visions. Others want more and more devotion. So they may or may not see any vision. They are particular about having more devotion, having more and more conviction. Yes, in ultimate analysis, it is not the experience, it is not seeing a vision. The most important thing, to have so much devotion to God, so much love for God, that itself is its own guarantee. That itself is a great strength. So those who cultivate devotion, they will have spiritual experiences in the form of visions and voices or inner conviction. Conviction will be so great, the presence of God will become so real with them, even without seeing with bodily eyes. It will be so great, they cannot be dislodged from that position. After all, spiritual experiences are inner things, inner feelings. When you feel within yourself that you have got it, and you find the result of it, and you never get shaky. Yes, when your false experiences afterwards will become shaky, it will be put to test. You cannot stand the test. But those who have the real experiences, they will walk through the fires of life. They will never get shaky because they had the experiences. And those who practice what is called philosophical inquiry, Jnana Yoga, their experiences will be different. They were thinking in terms of that only oneness is real, everything is unreal. So they will be, and they find and they analyze and they meditate on the transitory thingness of the world, and we find that everything in the universe is transitory. Only we do not like to feel it. We do not like to confess that to ourselves because our life is dependent on transitory things of the world. We do not like to say that the world is ephemeral, that the world is transitory. But those who practice that form of spiritual life, they will be meditating, they will be bold. They want to see what is the difference, what is the reality behind the transitoriness of the universe. In our fright, in our fear, we don't like to say. We think we can protect ourselves by not thinking. But you cannot escape reality that way. The world is transitory. everything in the world is changing. So those who are bold will try to see that everything in the world is changing. We must see what is thing behind this changing things. They go that way. Naturally, their experiences will be of different kind. They may not see any vision. They may not see the vision of Shiva or vision of Christ or any such vision. They may or may not see. For I say, when the mind passes through these stages, one may see many things. It is said, when the infinite knocks at the door of the finite, mind passes through different stages. All these things are not bounded by compartmental division. One gets mixed up. As for instance, even when one was working in a dedicated spirit, one might have in him elements of devotion. So he might have experiences of devotional life too. But as a general outlook, as a general outline, experiences will be of different kinds. First is, when one has devotional type, one will see visions. Ramakrishna used to say, God in his infinite kindness takes a form and comes as a form, as God with form before the devotees. Some person would not believe it, and Ramakrishna said, how can you believe it? You have not gone in that way even. How can you say one thing or the other? You have no experience of spiritual life. So, we cannot deny the spiritual experience of the person. Though we should be critical, we cannot deny. Yes, it is the experience of saints. God takes form and comes to the devotees in those forms. Because of that, those who worship Shiva get the vision of Shiva. Those who worship Kali in Indian mythology, they get the vision of Kali. We cannot make any research how the worship of Shiva came into being, who first experienced the vision of Kali. The research was won't help, because we do not know what is happening in the mind. We do not know what is happening in the spiritual level. With historical researches, we get some outward data, but these things are not dependable. We do not know the real experience. We do not know what things are happening in the mind of the spiritual experience. But this we know, that many persons have these visions. The criterion, the standard that the visions are correct is that the life had become much better than the life of those persons who are critical. Not only much better, their lives have become perfect in certain cases. Swami Vivekananda says, if the vision of Kali can make one Ramakrishna, I shall 1,000 times worship Mother Kali. But for others, what is this? Worshipping the Divine Mother. But they do not know. They speak in ignorance. They speak in a state of delirium as it were. They do not know the reality. But these are the real experiences. So Ramakrishna said, you have not gone in that way. You have not tried even. How can you judge? How can you pass any judgment that way? And when one develops spiritual life, then and higher experiences begin to come, and God is all pervading. Ramakrishna used to say that then the experience comes as if you are in an ocean of light. You are submerged in that light. Everything is covered with that light. And afterwards, ego is altogether gone. When ego is altogether gone, then you have no reality. There is only one pervading presence. And that is the highest experience. But only standard that one has the real experience is what that experience has made his life. What was the outcome of that experience? A tree is judged by its fruits. What we find, if a person has genuine experience, one becomes pure, perfectly pure. One becomes extremely compassionate, or loving, even if they do not engage themselves in work. Their feeling for others, their prayer for others is so genuine and so intense that prayer is much more important than actual work, giving a handful of rice, a few coins of money. Their prayer is much more powerful. Their silence is much more profitable, beneficial to humanity. And a great energy is released, we find. Say, St. Francis of Assisi, how hard work he did. St. Teresa, Buddha, for 40 years or more. I think he had his realization at the age of 36, and he lived up to the age of 80. Almost every day he'd be walking for 10 or 12 miles, and he would preach his gospel. He would preach his gospel not for name, not for money or anything. He did it out of great compassion. And so a great energy is released. We find them exceptionally compassionate. These are the standards by which outsiders can judge. Because from outside we cannot judge what is happening in the sphere of one's inner life. Outwardly we find so perfect. We are struggling hard to remove our weaknesses. We find in them there is no weakness. There is no human weakness left in them. We are struggling for ideals. In them we find the fulfillment of those ideals. That is the only standard. And they can give peace, and then they can give real strength to people. So in their lifetime, people begin to flock around them. It might be sometimes they do not get large following, but as they pass away, the following becomes larger and larger. Afterwards, people feel sorry that they did not see them. Who knows, even if they had seen them, they would not have been able to recognize them. They would not be interested in them because their spiritual yearning was not awakened. But in any case, we find as the saints pass away, larger and larger number of persons become interested in them. And afterwards, there's a big organization, big churches and temples are built, but in them we do not see even the fraction of the spiritual fire that was present in them in their lifetime. So even a fraction of fire in the form of temples and churches do get great good to a large number of persons. Such was the life they lived. Work that way. Let us begin our spiritual practices. Let us continue them. And as we continue them, spiritual practices are bound to come because there is cause and effect relation. If we put energy into certain things, it will generate energy. And if we do our spiritual practices without thinking, very wistful of spiritual experiences at the very beginning, they come. In what form they will come, we do not know. But if we continue, it is up to each one of us to realize the highest, if not in this life, in the life to come.